Jersey. Yeah, Jersey's crazy. I love it though. It just has this energy. I wasn't the most well-behaved kid. Doing things I knew I wasn't supposed to do, something about that excited me. I don't know why, but yeah, I was a bit of a troublemaker. So, I was about 8 or 9, and we were staying in these apartments. They were across the street from the school I was attending at the time, actually, Elizabeth V. Edwards Elementary. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted schools on the East Coast. It was actually featured on Ghost Hunters. I never saw anything strange while I was there, though. Anyway, my friend Garrett and I, we're outside because it's the 90s, just looking for something to do. There were a few rundown houses in the area, and there was actually one right next to the apartment. So, Garrett and I are walking around the lot the house is in, and we find a gun because New Jersey. For whatever reason, we decide that we're going to take the butt of the gun and break the glass out of the few windows left on the ground floor that aren't boarded up or already broken. I have no explanation on why we thought this was a good idea. Just a couple of dumb kids being dumb kids. So, we start breaking the glass. Garrett's breaking out a window on the back side of the house, and I start breaking a window on the side facing the apartments. I break a few panes, and then I get this weird feeling. Not like a we shouldn't be doing this feeling, unfortunately, but a feeling like someone is watching me. So I turn around, expecting to see my mom or uncle or someone from the complex, but there's no one there. I kind of shrug it off and go back to the windows. Then I look up to like the 3rd story window. There's this old woman staring down at me. She looks like she's in her late 70s or early 80s. She has like short gray hair, and she's wearing this really worn, kind of tattered white dress. And she looks furious. I just look up at her for a few seconds. Her glare is really kind of terrifying. So I drop the gun and run back to my apartment. I don't even say anything to Garrett. So it turns out that window was directly across from the window in our kitchen. For the next few days, I avoid that window at all costs, even eating my cereal at the counter instead of taking a chance at seeing that woman again. Then, about a week later, my Aunt Kathy comes by. Now, a lot of people in my family were very spiritual. Both my aunts in particular claim to see spirits and read tarot cards and stuff like that. I always kind of shrugged it off. I'm really analytical. For me, if science can't prove it, I have a hard time believing it's real. But this is 100% real, and I can't explain it. So, Kathy comes by and sits at the kitchen table, which is next to the window. The kitchen was really small, so it was kind of the only chair that you weren't completely cramped in. So she's talking, and then she stops suddenly and gazes off in the direction of the house next door. My mom and I just kind of look at her, and finally, my mom asks if she's okay. My aunt kind of snaps her head around and says, yeah, she's fine, and goes back to whatever she was talking about. Eventually, I head off to play some Madden 93 on my Sega Genesis, because 90s. Then, before she leaves, my aunt bends down and whispers in my ear, the spirit of the older woman next door doesn't appreciate you and your friend destroying her property. I was confused for a few seconds, and then chills went up my spine. And my aunt just smiled and said she'd talk to me later. I never even looked at that house for the rest of the time I lived there.
all through my life, I've lived in houses that had something wrong with them. What that wrong thing was, I don't know. Maybe they were haunted. That's the only explanation I can come up with, because it was more than just an electrical short. These are really strange things. I don't know why some people seem to be attracted to this kind of thing, or maybe it is attracted to them. I mean, you can't help the house that you move into that something's wrong with it. Perhaps most people don't notice things happening, but these were things happening, and a lot of people noticed. When I was growing up, I was between 14 and 17 years old, living in this one house that looked like an old ranch house. I don't know how old it was. I think it was built in the 1920s, maybe. It was a very small house with added-on rooms. You could tell that people had added 2 or 3 more rooms onto it from the original size because of the trim in the different parts of the house, and then how different the additions were. So when you walk into the house, there's a big porch, a screened-in porch, that probably at one time was either a room or it could have been a porch around the house. But whatever it was then, it was closed up with a screen and a screen door. And then when you walk in to the front door, there's the living room, and then my bedroom off to the right, my mom's bedroom in the middle, and then her sewing room, which was my sister's bedroom before she moved out. Then, if you keep going straight, you go into the dining room, and then to the bathroom and the kitchen. And then, if you turn left from the kitchen, there's the additional rooms that nobody really used. We didn't use them for anything. They were add-ons, and they were cold, and they just didn't seem like part of the house. So nobody really went in there. We just used it to put stuff into that we weren't using. There were times where the house was extremely cold, and there was no explanation. And we live in California. I've lived in California all my life. And yes, there are some times of the year in maybe November, December, and January where it does get kind of cold, but not like this. This was like if you lived in a house in the snow and a window was left open. You could see your breath at that point. And this was typical of the back bedroom that was my mom's sewing room. That room was always freezing. You would walk in there in the middle of the day. It could be 100 degrees out, and you would see your breath in that room. That was also the same room that my brother's friend saw something go into it. He was sitting in the corner in the living room facing the bathroom. And he gets up and he just looks in the room and he's like, what was that? And my brother's like, what are you talking about? And I just saw a man-sized cat creature walk from your bathroom into that back bedroom, which was the cold sewing room. It was big and yellow and fluffy like a giant cat, but it was man-sized and it walked on 2 feet. And we're thinking, okay, what kind of drugs is this guy on? Come on. But this was before, all the strange stuff started happening. And then right when he saw that, things started happening around the house. My sister and I would get really thin scratches down our bodies and under our clothes and on our arms that just normally wouldn't be there. When you play with a kitten and there's scratches and they give you little welts? Well, it's the same thing, except we didn't have a kitten. I had a cat, but there was no way she would get scratches inside our bodies. And one of them just pretty much happened right before us. We're standing there and my sister's like, oh, I feel it burning. And she looks and there it is, the scratch. My cat was really protective of me. She would bite my boyfriend's hands sometimes. It was pretty funny. But other times, she would be in my bedroom and I would be sleeping or trying to sleep, and my cat liked to lay on top of my shoulder, and suddenly she would just start growling out of nowhere. She would circle my bed, walk around me, growl, look in the direction of the window when there was nothing there, and she would just growl and walk around and settle back down. And she would do that several times per night. I figure, well, it could be an animal outside, but there was never an animal outside when it happened. One time, my sister and her friend were playing cards at the dining room table. And the way the house was set up, we had the main dining room, then a window that was originally put on the house looking into the built-in room that had another window on the other side. And my sister's friend is facing that, and they're playing cards, and suddenly her face goes completely white as a sheet, and she gets up, goes into the kitchen, and grabs the biggest knife she can find, and sits back down. And my sister says, "What is wrong with you?" And she just said, "I saw a face looking in through that window." And it was looking inside the house, but it didn't look like a person. It was just a white face that was kind of blurry. It didn't look like it had any features, but it did. And so we all got up and we started looking around the house. We didn't find anything, but of course these crazy things just kept on happening. It was just unreal. You know, people don't believe me when I tell them, but I lived it. We eventually just moved out of there, and it didn't happen again in the new house that we lived in. I don't know if it's still going on in that old house, but it's not a place where I would prefer to live. Even looking at the pictures of it with the Google satellite are freaky. Just looking at it, it's like, oh, I don't want to go near that place.
YouTuber ghost stories. Let me start this off by saying I'm in no way, shape, or form religious or spiritual. I'm an atheist. But these happenings sure do make me wonder, is there really something out there? As I'm telling you this, it's July of 2018. But let's backtrack a bit. Let's go back to May of 2017. I'm in my basement. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. And you might say, what are you doing up at 3 o'clock in the morning? I suffer from insomnia. And being that it was near the end of school and SOLs were coming up, I was studying a lot. And since I can't sleep, I thought, why not? Well, as I'm doing my homework, I hear this blood-curdling scream of a woman. And I don't mean a scream like someone's upset. I mean the scream of someone being stabbed in the gut by like a rusty knife. Petrified, I looked up. I thought maybe I was sleep deprived as I only got a few hours of sleep before because of all the studying. I wanted so hard to believe that I did. And I just went back to studying. Then I heard it again. This time, I know I didn't make it up. I quickly jumped up, the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I was petrified. I didn't know what to do. I was just standing there. Quickly, I grabbed a gun from behind the counter, and I grabbed a flashlight and I went outside, thinking maybe somebody was hurt or being raped or murdered. I really didn't know at the time. But I just knew that sounded painful, and I just wanted to help that person. So I quickly ran out the door. Let me tell you how my backyard is laid out. I live in a neighborhood, but I have a lot of trees in my yard. So it's kind of hard for the moonlight to get in. And with all these trees, it's hard to see. I ran outside and I saw nothing. I walked the whole perimeter of my yard. I waited, and I waited, and I heard nothing. I just thought maybe I was still imagining things, but I just wasn't sure. I was petrified. I couldn't call the cops. I mean, what am I supposed to tell them? I heard somebody scream? Exhausted, I finally just went back inside and called it a night and tried to sleep. And the next few days were fine, and I thought maybe I just imagined it, sleep deprived. I know you can just make things up that aren't there. Then, a few days later, I was in my room, and my dad came in, and he told me earlier that morning my great-grandmother had passed away. Honestly, I wasn't shocked, as she was 101 years old, which is older than most of us will probably ever get. And I really wasn't putting two and two together at the time. Over the summer, I was at my brother's house. I was on the phone with my girlfriend. And we got talking about supernatural things, as we talk about a lot of things. And we got on this one topic of a banshee. Basically an omen of death. Saying when the banshee is kind of far off, it means someone near you is gonna die. I thought about it for a second, but I did hear the scream, and a few days later my great-grandmother did pass away, but she was 101. I thought maybe it was just a coincidence. Months went by, and everything was fine, and I soon forgot about the incident. Flash forward to December of 2017, where one of the most shocking and traumatizing events of my life happened to me. The date was December 19th, 6 days before Christmas. I was outside. It was about 11 o'clock. I was taking my dog around back. We had just got a fresh layer of snow, and it was unseasonably cold, as it was in the teens to low single digits. I was sitting there just admiring the snow and the cold and the moon, when that terrifying scream, the scream I had heard so many months before, I heard it again. I stood there paralyzed. I was terrified to move. I thought, no, this can't be happening again. I looked around, but I saw nothing. I couldn't move, and my dog was alerted as well, and I knew she heard it too. I wanted to run so bad to the door and just go inside and forget I'd heard it. But I tried, but none of my muscles would move. I heard it again. But it was still far off. And then I thought of the banshee. Finally, I mustered up enough strength to run inside, almost falling in the snow, my dog quickly behind me. I locked the door, and I just went in my room, and I sat there staring at the wall. Who am I going to tell? Am I going to tell my parents that I heard a blood-curdling scream? They're not going to believe me. No one is. I just blocked it out and forgot about it, as I just didn't want to believe it. Finally, I went to bed. The next few days were fine. Until December 22nd. At 10:45 p.m., my father suffered a major heart attack and passed away. He died in my arms, and that's when it all clicked. The screams. They were omens of death. And I don't know if I believe it, but it just makes sense. I haven't heard the screams again, and I hope to God, if there is a God, I never do. Because it is a terrifying feeling, because I now know that when I hear the screams off in the distance, someone close to me is gonna die again. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe I made it up. But the first time maybe, but my dog heard it too. She was very alerted. To this day, I still don't know what I heard. To the best of my knowledge, I believe on those 2 nights, I heard the screams of a banshee.